Hello, everyone. Holly with Reality Sandwich here. Today, I'm catching up with Ryan, one of our authors at Reality Sandwich, and we're going to be chatting a bit about dreams today and lucid dreaming. Thanks for joining me, Ryan. It's nice to join you here.
Yeah, Holly, thanks for having me.
Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do, where you are in the world.
So my name is Ryan Hurd, and I'm a dream researcher and educator and author, and I'm living in Philadelphia. I've been in Philly for 14 years now, and I teach dreaming at the graduate level at National University with the JFK School of Psychology, and I also teach membership and coaching as well for folks who want to become what I call luminous dreamers. So folks who want to use dreaming as a tool for self growth and self knowledge, spiritual inspiration, problem solving, creativity. I mean, right? Any kind of dreaming is amazing for that.
Very cool. Okay, so take me back a ways. How does one get interested in studying dreaming at the level that you have? Have you been interested in dreams your entire life? Have you been an active dreamer your entire life? Where did this begin?
I've been writing down my dreams since I was 14 years old. I have a whole gigantic thing full of journals what started it off was, of course, nightmares, and I was having sleep paralysis nightmares too when I was that age, which is typical. And I would become lucid in some of those dreams, and that was very empowering for me as a teenager to be able to say, kind of to stand up for myself in my dreams. And of course, there wasn't at that time a lot that I knew about how to kind of get access. I mean, dating myself, but like you'd have to go to a library and like use a card catalog to figure out like what's going on here. But what happened as I became a young adult was just this plethora of lucid dreaming research that became more and more popular, and I realized, oh, that's what's happening. So it's been a thread in my life, really, for a really long time.
I like that, being able to stand up for yourself in your dreams. That's kind of a cool way to think about taking that action in lucid dreaming. So tell me a little bit about what's the difference between lucid dreams and vivid dreams, and what are some of the basics of how you know if you're actually lucid dreaming?
Right. So lucid dreaming is technically defined as knowing that you're dreaming in the dream. And so that's the minimal definition. And it's a really ecstatic experience the first time that somebody has it. And it happens spontaneously for lots of folks, generally when we're young adults. And so kind of coming of age, there's something going on with the brain and our self-awareness and our metacognition. We just begin to witness ourself and our behavior in waking life. And then there's a parallel that happens sometimes in the dream. And it's a really shocking experience the first time. It feels like I would say it's a peak experience. It can be even really transcendental in a certain degree, because I'm looking around and I realize that everything that I'm experiencing and sensing and noticing, that it's all part of my imaginal realm. It's not out there in the world. It's my interior landscape. And that is like it's a shock. It's shocking. It's paradigm busting. And when you wake up from that experience, it kind of bleeds out into the rest of life. Like, oh, like there's now a metaphor. Like, how do I wake up to my life? Like, how do I wake up to the fact that my senses in waking life also, we could say there's this, degree of like, this is an illusion, or it at least is a constrained reality that can be modulated, right? And so there's a really transformative aspect to even just the first lucid dream.
How do you explain this phenomenon happening? What what is happening in somebody's brain that would allow them to lucid dream versus just your run of the mill average dream?
So what's interesting about the research is that we are naturally having a lot of metacognition in our dreams all of the time. And so we think about our feelings, we think about our thoughts, we think about our actions, just like in waking life. It also happens in dreams. So this idea that we're single-minded in dreams and being sort of dragged through a narrative is a cultural learning that I think we have to unlearn in order to become basically extraordinary dreamers. We have to realize, oh no, that there's this the ability to harness, to move into our power, even in a non-lucid dream. And once you have that attitude flip, you see it in all of the dreams, not even the lucid ones. But what's going on in the brain? There's some really interesting neuroscience that's been happening over I would say, the last 30 years, and it has to do with metacognition in the frontal parts of the brain. And so the newer parts of the brain are more activated than in ordinary dreams. And the way that it looks, say, in an fMRI, is it looks more like it does in a waking life, basically, than it does compared to an ordinary dream. And so lucid dreaming, some people have said, oh, well, it's sort of like a hybrid state of consciousness. And that's a good metaphor. I don't think it's true, because it is truly dreaming. It's happening usually in what's known as REM sleep, but lucidity has been known to happen in all the stages of sleep. So it's not just a REM phenomena. In fact, there's meditators who have been shown in the laboratory that they're self-aware and conscious throughout the night. And so we know that this can be developed as a skill. And that's kind of, I think, the exciting part really is that lucid dreaming happens spontaneously to some people some of the time. But also when we focus on it and we do a couple of behavior changes and practice, essentially start doing a little bit of dream training, that most people can have a lucid dream, and often pretty quickly, often within 2 to 3 weeks of starting the training.
Okay, that's very cool. I fall into the camp of someone who's had random and sporadic lucid dreams. I've been a very active dreamer ever since I was a little kid. Me and my dad are both like that. So every morning was always exciting around breakfast, because we'd be like, hey, what kind of weird world were you in last night? Or, and we'd like share our dream stories. That was kind of our thing. And then it's not regular, but I've had a few experiences. And I think that one of my questions, based on some of my own experiences, is, do you think that there's any possibility that what is happening during this time is correlated to astral projection or insights into past lives or parallel universes, or is it just not that deep?
Yeah. It's absolutely correlated in the way that dreaming works in general is that we dream about the things that we think about. So this is the continuity hypothesis to dreaming is that we dream about the people, the things, the emotions that we have in a waking life. And this includes the way that we think as well. So our pattern of thinking. And so it sounds like that could be self-limiting, but what happens is that dreaming brings novelty as well. And so there is an enhanced sense of creativity as there is this sort of more of a surrender to emotional logic and that kind of, autonomous visual imagery that emerges in the dream. I mean, maybe that's why we aren't always super duper self-aware in our dreams, is to allow this, visionary information to come through in a new way, rather than get sort of stamped down by the logical brain to say that's not important, that doesn't involve, work or or whatever, our sort of narrow, constraints of how we see reality in a way. And so what happens is that when folks study their dreams and get into their dreams, they begin to wake up to these new sorts of possibilities. It becomes metaphysical very quickly. And so our beliefs are tested, I would say. And even sometimes subverted. And so it becomes very cosmic in, where these questions begin to emerge about, like, what is time? What is space? How does information travel? How did I come to know this when I couldn't have known this before? Synchronicities where we'll have a dream and then something eerily like it will happen in waking life that is beyond the pale in terms of what we would say chance. And so, as always with dreams, there's this danger, I think, of self-deception. In fact, some of the research suggests that when you work on your dreams alone, you tend to just reinforce the ideas that you have about things like the cosmos and whatnot. But when we work our dreams with others and when we share our dreams and it becomes a communal process, then it gets interesting. That's when our ideas and our theories and our ways of seeing the world are tested and compared and become more expansive. And so all of these things that you mentioned about other ways of knowing that maybe don't make sense from a materialistic standpoint, they all tend to play a role in dreaming cognition. I think it's literally where magic happens. This is magical consciousness.
And so this is a part of what you do, right? Like you work with groups and people are working on this dream cognition together and sharing this information. Is that a part of your work?
Yeah, one thing I love to do is work in. I'm a community builder, and I have been doing that work for a very long time. And for instance, in my membership site, the Dream Portal, we work together, share our dreams, and we inspire each other. And I've seen so many times how, like, a positive community can give people inspiration and new ways of seeing it. For instance, we had one dreamer had an out-of-body experience. And someone else was like, wow, I've never, really thought about that before. And then within a week, she had an out-of-body experience. And it was just like knowing that this was possible opened up this whole way of thinking. And so that's what's so cool about dream sharing and about making it a communal process is I think that we dream, in a sense, the large picture is we dream for each other. Like we're part of an ecosystem. We're part of a landscape, a shared landscape that stretches throughout time and space. And so opening up to dream work is like opening up to a larger reality.
How does one know, like, what's an out of body experience in a dream look like? What would an example of that be?
So out of body experiences are tangentially related to dreams and often may be coming out of the same phenomena. And sometimes they seem to be happening in REM sleep when we've had folks, who are, like, say, wired up in the lab and whatnot. There's a kinesthetics that happens that emerges out of sleep paralysis, where essentially, what happens in REM is that we lose contact with our skeletal muscles. We become paralyzed. And this is typical. This is normal. What happens every night, whether we remember it or not. In that way, when we're dreaming, we're not acting out our dreams in waking life, right? And there's a disorder that happens when that process breaks down. It's REM behavior disorder. People start actually, acting out their dreams. It's quite dangerous, right? Mike Birbiglia, the comedian, has this really wonderful stand-up routine that he has done where he talks about his explorations of REM behavior disorder, where at one point he literally throws himself through a window in waking life and on a second story window and runs around a hotel in his underwear covered in blood before he realized that, oh, I'm dreaming. I need to wake up. So there's some really interesting, like, biological aspects here. And so astral projection or out of body kind of uses some of these same mechanisms. And so what happens in an out of body experience is that there's a disassociation that happens from the physical body. And it feels like the phenomenology of it is that we are separating from our normal egoic vantage point, and we move into a very realistic or a very dreamlike environment. So out of body experiences can really run the gamut in terms of what happens. And I'm not saying that you are moving out of body or not, but this is what it feels like. And there's some really intriguing stories of people who have been able to verify information, and I can't explain that. And so I, kind of like, oh, well, that's something that that for me is a mystery that can't be explained yet. So out of body experiences and dreams have a lot of similarities, and sometimes you can use one to move into the other. For me, okay. For me,
Yeah, I'm curious about that because one of the most fascinating parts of my dream experiences involved when I first started consciously doing some dream work and working with herbs and crystals and really consciously preparing myself to dream. And
for
one of the
me,
first experiences I had was a bit fantastical and incredibly lucid. And I had quickly realized in this dream that I was a different person. I was very much in this body, but it was the body of a young boy. It was this totally different thing. And I was like, okay, well, that was fun. It was like playing a role. But I've had multiple dreams now where I've been this young boy, very much my mental consciousness, but I'm living a different life in a different body. So that's been a very curious thing for me throughout time of, I was the little boy again last night in this part of the world in this past time. And to me, I'm like, okay, well, seems out of body, and I've had dream themes like that. And I don't know how to rationalize what that is. But I know those types of dreams are always when I wake up also feeling so tired. Like I was literally living this other life. I'm exhausted the next day. It was like I didn't get any sleep at all. Do a lot of lucid dreamers and avid dreamers have that experience, like the exhaustion as though you were just up all night, even though you were sleeping?
it's interesting. Some people say that if it's emotionally intense, there can be sort of an exhaustion, especially if it feels like a lot of time has passed. Sometimes there can be the sense that time has dilated, or that a lot of time has passed, and then but often that's sort of balanced by the exhilaration of having such an extraordinary event, but that we're wired at the same time. It's like, oh, I'm tired, but also what was that? And there's like sort of this excitement about it. Some of the studies with lucid dreaming, people have asked, oh, is this harmful for sleep? Because sometimes the practices involve like waking up in the middle of the night, doing some meditation, setting some intentions. It is technically disruptive to sleep life, but it's such a small part to the practice and to the process that I think that it's healthy, essentially, that especially when it happens spontaneously, I'm not worried about exhaustion and whatnot. I mean, for me, it's just like this is one of these events that, again, beyond the pale, where it's like, okay, so reality now is bigger than I thought it was. Uh, Notice how the way that I made meaning before has changed, and how this kind of extraordinary experience can change my worldview. And when our worldview changes, our behavior changes, right? And so there's this sort of this consciousness at the center, shifting our behavior, and then this is why I believe that attending to dreams, to altered states of consciousness, to not just living in a world where we're all drum living, a rational life. Like it's invigorating to not just ourselves, but to society, to culture. Like this is where innovative ideas and envisioning new futures and new possibilities comes from. This is the template that allows it to happen.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, it's in the name, right? It's dreams, it's dreaming, it's acknowledging dreams and creating dreams. And yeah, it's getting little tidbits to take into waking life. It's all built into the name. So I want to hear a little bit about some of your personal experiences. Everybody talks about lucid dreaming and it's like oh, I wanted to fly, and of course, like that's fantastic. But is there like when you enter a lucid dream, is there something that is kind of like a hallmark of your experience that you're like, this is how I like to approach my dream world? What does that look like for you?
I mean, sure. So I've gone through a lot of different, I think you could say, stages of my dream life, and what do I do when I become lucid? And these days, I tend to act like an anthropologist. I take a participant observation kind of role, and I like to stick with the dream. And so when I was younger, I would do more hard intentions, bucket list kind of stuff, and would generally use the dream as a platform from which to launch, and do what I wanted to do. And now I work on staying grounded, sticking with what the dream shows me, because it's like meeting the dream halfway. And so there's a more of an emotional vibrancy to the dream when I stay in what is emergent, and those dreams end up feeling more meaningful to me. They're more impactful. And so it goes from a sort of what I would call a shallow exhilaration to a deeper sense of meaning making or participation in my imaginal life. And part of that is just respecting that I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what's around the corner. I don't know what's down the weird staircase that goes into the dark room. And I'm a little scared, but I'm going to show up with some courage and see what's there. And it's always something new and novel. Like, it moves beyond expectation when we take a kind of courageous path like that. And so that's just where I am right now. I've had all kinds of different ways of being in the dream before, but I'm sort of, I guess you could say, a dream naturalist right now as I enter into these spaces.
Do you encounter other people when you dream, or entities or beings, or are you primarily alone?
Well, that's a cool question. So I did a self-study once. This was what my master's thesis was on in lucid dreaming, was what happens when I performed a particular injunction, which was I would realize I was dreaming. I would go through a portal of some sort to disturb the dream imagery. I would enter, therefore, into kind of a bit of a void-like space in which my dream body has dissolved. So I'd be sort of a point of consciousness within a imageless field. I would meditate in that field for as long as possible. And then what happens, if I was successful, is that the dream reconstitutes around me. And what my thesis did, it was essentially structurally analyzed what that reconstruction process was like. And what happens for me is that the dream enters into a period of containment, so I can feel like that I'm in a room now before I see it. And then the visual parts, oh, here it is, I'm in a room. And then I would have awareness of my dream body, and I would be embodied once again. And then and only then, after moving about a little bit, would dream characters show up. And so and then it would be like a dialogue, or it would move into an interactional space. And so this is the way that the dream constitutes for me. And that's why it's interesting that longer lucid dreams can be more impactful, because we move into that encounter scenario. It's very interesting, right? To be in a dream with a dream figure and to be like, okay, so this is a dream. What does that mean about the reality of who I'm speaking to? And also, of course, what does it mean about the reality of myself? Because I also am a constructed being, embodied being in this dream space. I'm no more real than this dream figure is. Is it part of me? Is it an alien intelligence? Is it, ontologically from a different space, right? All of those questions happen in real time that can be entered then into almost like transference and countertransference occurring, because my doubt can be mirrored by the dream figure that I'm with, and they can become, almost irritable at my internal process, it seems, because it seems like they have access to my thoughts, perhaps, but I don't have access to their thoughts, and that's weird. And so, do I have to watch what I think? Anyway, so we can really move into those spaces that it's very dynamic.
Or is it just another dreamer that's having the same thoughts you're having, and you're both just like two humans that ran into each other in dreamland somewhere? Like, what's this guy doing over here?
Right. And so, I haven't personally had a lot of, I would say, hits or, for me, of mutual dreaming, but I have encountered a lot of narratives from reputable sources of people who are skilled in this way. Linda Magellan is a researcher who studied mutual dreaming, I think 30 years ago. Her book's a classic. James Kroll and Maria Pita wrote a book where they were entering their own each other's dreams, and mutually dreaming and sharing these dreams the next day. And it's shocking. And I know these people, and they're not lying, right? And so, what is happening, right? Like, are we actually having an encounter at this time and space, or right? Is this about where time and space are just being wonky, and perhaps it's about precognition. Perhaps it's, maybe it's not telepathy. I don't know. You enter into these confounds that I don't think research has really tied out, but experientially, it gets really weird. And when things get weird, that's where it gets interesting. That's when our paradigm of reality begins to break down. That's where it's so important to pay attention to the anomalous, to pay attention to that, what we don't understand, to be skeptical, on one hand, but also open to new information on the other.
Yeah, that I'm really fascinated by the where it gets weird stuff. The particularly, the super unexplainable things like that. I remember listening to a podcast maybe a couple years back about this woman was sharing a story about how she had a dream world that she went to, this village, and she'd been doing this ever since she was a little kid. And she looked a little different in the dream, but it was mostly her. But she had a whole entire life here. And she continued to have this dream well into adulthood, maybe a couple times a month. And her dream self grew up in this village, just like she grew up in real life. And, to her, this was just kind of like a normal part of her world. And the story culminates in how she wakes up in the dream world one time, and she's now been convicted of murder in this village she lives in. She's been imprisoned. And this is like this is a time when, you're hung for your crimes, sort of a thing. This was like an old world sort of village. So she's now been having these dreams for decades. And one time she pops in, and she's now in this prison cell, and she's been convicted of murder. She doesn't think she's going to be able to get off for this crime. And then that's it. She never goes back. And she desperately believes that she had been hung for her crimes in this dream world that she has no recollection of committing. So she's telling this story as she's deeply saddened, because this was another life she felt that she was living parallel to her human life. And especially when she was younger, that was very confusing. And then she was also just like, well, what could I have done over there? And like, so was someone else inhabiting that dream life when I wasn't asleep inhabiting that dream life? Or how did I jump into the consciousness of this person that obviously, these just weird, unexplainable things. And, I love absorbing stories like that, because I just am fascinated by the possibility of what that could even mean. It's so interesting to me. Obviously, that's kind of a harrowing tale. Didn't turn out so well for her, but
Yeah. It sounds like an episode of Outlander, right?
Yeah, totally. It sounds exactly like an episode of Outlander. But yeah, it's wild. The things that people dream and what the possibilities are, especially the team dreaming that you just mentioned, or dream sharing. Like, it's so cool.
There's a story I can tell. It's been a while since I've reviewed this one, but I had a dreamer contact me through my website and say, "Okay, listen, I'm not into dreams, but I had this experience, and then I had a synchronicity, and I'm sort of destabilized from it. Have you ever seen
She was
anything like this?" So he tells me his story, and his story is that he had a dream that he was a monk in some right, I don't know, medieval perhaps time, uh, wandering the halls of this stone abbey, and he came in contact with a man named Claret who said, "It's so good to see you.
she
Welcome
was
back." He recognized him, and he kind of got this information download that happened in their exchange, and and so he came away from the dream with some information and a name. And one of the pieces of information had to do with something that he called, I think, the third heaven. It's kind of like beyond the first and the second heaven, there's a third heaven or something like that. And so he woke up and he did what any sensible person would do is he got onto Google and he looked up these keywords. And lo and behold, he found Saint Claret, who was this medieval monk, literally existed, who not only that, had some theology related to something he called, in translation, the third heaven. And it was a realm that the saint basically postulated based on his own meditative experiences, his own dream experiences. And so I researched this too. I looked into it, and everything that he said, like, was accurate. And this person was coming to me not to brag or, be like, splash this all over, I want to be famous. He was like, I'm really freaked out by this. Like, I don't like understand. He's like, I'm not even Catholic. I don't, I'm not Christian. I don't have, I was never, in like Catholic religious training. I would never have come across, names of saints and things like that, even deep in my childhood. So, and I was like, listen, I really don't know what to tell you, but thank you for sharing your story. And so that's just one story of, dozens that I've heard of this kind of thing. And that's, I think, a calling card to extraordinary experiences is that we're left with an expanded worldview, but also a lot of questions and confusion, and it's disruptive, right, to our worldview because the way that we thought the world works turns out something else is happening, and how do you make sense of that? And we enter into a stage of I think very uncomfortable, kind of between the paradigms of reality, and so yeah, these things are impactful, and they cause people to look deeper at how am I spending my time? Like, what am I doing? What is my purpose on this planet? Questions of this nature come to mind for folks who never, say, had a religious bone in their body. As far as I know, this person did not convert to Christianity or anything of that nature. I mean, that's the. I actually I followed up with him. I think 6 months later, I was like, "You okay?" You know what I mean? And he was like, "I'm okay." He's like, "I still don't get it. I don't know. I'm still not Catholic." I'm like, "Got it."
no, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I come across people that, they have a dream like that or something, that one dream, those few dreams that they remember forever, or, a recurring dream from childhood that comes back. And it's like, why is this knocking again? Why do I keep having this dream? I see similar people in my dreams sometimes come back again and again, and they'll do the same thing, and like not interacting with this person, but they just keep showing up. Like, okay, what do you say something? What are you doing here? Um, yeah, it's so fascinating.
you know,
Do you we talk a lot at Reality Sandwich about integration because we're talking a lot about processing and integrating from psychedelic experiences. Do you think that dream work can be a part of integrating experiences we have in waking life, or particularly with psychedelics? Do you see any connection there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was 1968 or not 69 when Charles Tart first came up with his book on altered states of consciousness, and he had a whole chapter related to what he called high dreams, in which there were dreams of being intoxicated. I think he was using cannabis as the example there. But of course, on Erowid, so many people have reported after having taken plant medicine or LSD that they have a dream in which they are in that realm again. And I think these dreams are our way of re-entering the space, well, kind of trying to process what happens. Because if we don't remember it, how can we transform? It's a big piece of it. And of course, there are folks now who are doing and using dream work for psychedelic integration. Kathleen is doing that work with the Lucid School, right? And so there's some really interesting therapists who are using dreams to help do this. And I think that the practical piece is that anytime we have any kind of transformative experience, whether it's from a psychedelic session or not, but to journal your dreams and be mindful of your dreams for a month, at least a month afterwards, and have an active practice of recording dreams. And because we're setting an intention that, hey, the lines of communication are still open, right? We're tuning our minds to this esoteric information and just saying, yeah, like let's keep the discussion going. What else is there? What else did I miss? What else is nagging at me? And kind of working with those sort of paradigm busting moments to come to new levels of understanding.
So what would be like a quick hit list or an action plan you would offer to somebody who's looking to enrich their dream life? How could somebody start working on that tonight? What's the best course of action?
The best thing you can do is to honor the dream in waking life, and so to build a cognitive and emotional bridge between the dream world and the waking world. And so how do we do that? We do that through dream journaling, for keeping a journal. I use an app called Elsewhere to do this. Elsewhere, I can speak my dream and it auto dictates and becomes a text. And then, the symbols are recorded and things of that nature. And so it's nice. Then I can download into Excel documents all of that data. And it's very interesting. But I also, I'm a dreamer, so I take a lot of time with this. So I write my dreams down physically too, analog style. But that's just for solo dream work. It's really helpful, I think, to talk, with, if you have a partner or a close friend, to someone who will deeply listen to your dream and not brush you off with like, oh no, there he is with his weird dream again. Like you have to choose your time wisely, right? Like when you share a dream, like you can't be standing in line at Chipotle. Like that's not a good time to share a dream. Like it's a sacred space. You're sharing something internal and special. So choose that time, choose your listening partner well, become a good listener for them, right? And make it a practice. I think just starting with that stuff right there is enough to really kickstart all of those bridge building techniques that allow our dreams to become more memorable. We'll start remembering more dreams automatically. And this is the cool part, is that the dreams themselves actually shift. They become more sensible in a sense. They become less confusing and chaotic. It's like, oh, I'm learning this language. Like it's a different kind of way of being and thinking. It's visual. It's symbolic, and you don't necessarily even have to like know what it means. It's just that I'm honoring it. I'm expressing it. I'm working with this, and just to keep the dream alive. And so it's great to use dream dictionaries and stuff of that nature. But I don't use them often because for me, it's more about honing into my conscious awareness and its style from the dream and keeping that way of thinking alive in waking life. That's what keeps the lines of communication open. Well,
What are a couple of your favorite dream herbs to work with?
right. So dream herbs are fascinating, and I've experimented with quite a few over the years. And the probably for beginners, I would say start with something organic and something subtle like mugwort, just because it it is gentle and forgiving and welcoming, and most people develop a good relationship with it. It's very much about like, is this right? Is this my ally? And so mugwort can be taken as a tincture, in a pill. You can just, in fact, you can just put it in a dream pillow and put it underneath your pillow to gain, just into, so you're smelling it at night. Some people smoke it. You can vaporize it. It has active components that do really interesting things to memory, vividness, and especially vividness of hypnagogic imagery. So the imagery we see as we're drifting down into sleep. And there's something kind of special about that realm of dreaming that mugwort seems to enhance. And so I say folks to start there. It does have some contraindications. Pregnant women should not be messing around with mugwort. It is known as the women's herb, right? It's got some sort of ancient uses for that as a blood tonic as well. But that's a great place to start. And for me, that's an entryway into the vast plant world that supports the dream life. And there's so much to talk about. But my own research, some of which has been peer reviewed, I've ended with saying that right now galantamine is probably one of the most interesting, maybe misunderstood dream supplements currently available. And it is, synthesized from the snowdrop plant, but it activates memory, it activates vividness of dreams, and it encourages lucid dreams as well. And so it is not subtle. It can feel, in fact, very psychedelic when taken in the middle of the night. It's safe, and its after effects are just a few hours. And it is used. I mean, it's used by so many folks for memory problems at a prescription level, and so we have lots of information about its safety. But galantamine, when I say it's misunderstood, what's interesting about it is it seems to bring about dream bizarreness, and dream bizarreness can be confrontational. It can, have some like ragged edges. It can bring up emotional turbulence. It can bring up even violent imagery as well. And these things, when they come with a galantamine experience, I think about how this sometimes happens in psychedelics, where we enter into realms where we're shown images of suffering, or we're shown images of reality or of our organic condition, right? Of existential reality. It seems that galantamine sometimes brings this up as well. And yet the effect is what people say after they wake up is that wasn't a bad dream. I feel exhilarated. So there seems to be some almost like, I don't know, healing aspect to it. And this is what Greg Scott Sparrow, his thesis is on this topic. And I co-produced this paper with him, sponsored by the University of Texas, is that is there a healing therapeutic aspect to galantamine that we're just beginning to understand? Because most people are interested in going lucid. And they're like, well, I went lucid, but it was weird. Like it was, I don't know if I went, but over time, it turns out that these experiences are impactful and perhaps transformative. And so, that's just I'd say the starting point. And there's so many more that I didn't mention.
That's a good starting point. Well, how can I direct people to find out more about you and join your dream community?
Right. So thanks. My website is dreamstudies.org, and the membership community is community@dreamstudies.org. And you can check out. I have lots of material, lots of content. I've been writing about dream work and dream research since 2007, about all kinds of topics related to consciousness studies, altered states, dream work, especially lucid dreaming, sleep paralysis, and I would say extraordinary dreams. And so in the community, what we do is we support each other as we work on our own dreaming goals. And it's really fantastic. It's really a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for meeting today and sharing a bit about this. I'm excited to go to sleep tonight and do some dream work.
Yeah, watch your dreams tonight. I mean, this is it. When we talk about our dreams, the effect has already started.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Take care.